For the full Channel 5 newscast.
Welcome back, and of course our guest is on set. Let's welcome Dr. Faith B. Israel, Secretary of Health.
Wellness and Social Protection.
Very good. All they give me is Secretary of Health, but I can't recall everything, or, the tip of my tongue.
Certainly,
But
I have to think about it every now and then
Very
as well
good.
to remember. Good morning,
Yes,
gentlemen.
good
Nice
morning.
being here.
Very good, and good to have you. It's been a while. But let's get into it. Obviously, just an update as to, well, let's leave with COVID-19. Obviously, the last time we were here, you said we are in an endemic. And where are we now?
Well, we are still endemic, because endemic means we are high but consistent. So the numbers are showing, well, the official numbers are low. But I think that is because people are really just not going to get tested officially, and people are just testing themselves, buying the kits and testing themselves. But that might be a good thing. It's probably because people are not getting very, very sick, which is a wonderful thing. So even if we have it in the society, even though it's still circulating, what is happening now is not as tragic as what was happening November, December. So, you know, people get it. It's gotten to the point where we've built up a level of immunity, whether it is natural immunity because you've gotten it before, or immunity based on vaccination. We've built up a level of immunity, and the strain seems to be less dangerous right now, so that makes it good. That makes it, you know, in a better place. We're not out of the wind just yet, because as you know, we have a couple activities coming up in Tobago, and activities that bring people on the island, activities that cause people to not necessarily behave in the most, you know, responsible way. So when those activities happen, we will see how the numbers play out after those activities happen, and that will tell us whether we kind of out of it or not.
All right, and before my colleague will get into it, but just, all right, so as far as COVID-19, in terms of the numbers of cases, what do we have presently?
Presently, I have to look, but
Okay.
this morning, the update that I got this morning from the CMO said maybe 9 or so new official cases. We've had one official death within the last couple of days, but the deaths have gone back to, remember when we were only hearing deaths in very old people or people who were very sick. We've gone back to that, which is you know, really, a death is too much, but at least it's not where we were in like November and December, where we were having 6, 7 deaths per day, and many of those were even in the younger generation and so forth. The deaths we're having now are very few and far between. Thank God, condolences to those families though, but at least they are not as, you know, what we used to experience before. I would caution people though to still consider the fact that we still are dealing with COVID-19, that we still cannot just throw caution to the wind. We still cannot say we are out of it, even though many of us want to feel like we're out of it. I am sick and tired of the masks. I'm sick and tired of having to wash my hands all the time. I am sick and tired of having to do all of these things like everyone else. But we are not there yet, so we shouldn't give up on those tried, true, and tested mechanisms to prevent us from getting sick, or to prevent the infections from happening too much.
Okay, lovely. I think yesterday, or within the last 48 hours or so, I saw that the active cases were about 151 or so, and that is a relatively small number. But in terms of like the schools, what is taking place in the schools right now in terms of cases and in terms of protocols being observed?
So the schools, I mean, schools are a difficult situation because schools are children. Children in and of themselves are difficult individuals to follow rules. The good thing is, though, that, you know, at the beginning of the semester when we opened up, there were pretty decent numbers, but those have also consistently fallen. We actually worked very closely, as in my division and the Division of Education, worked very closely to develop the protocols that were rolled out in schools. There was a point where we needed to go back and revise them a little bit, because after working them, you know, you could put something on paper, and then when you roll it out, you realize you need to tweak this, you need to tweak that. So a couple weeks into it, we went back and tweaked the things that needed to be fixed. The Division of Education actually has a full health team that they are working working with. So there's a doctor and a couple nurses that deal directly with the students, which is separate to the adults and everyone else. So we've been able to put that kind of system in place, and that has actually worked pretty well for us. Of course, children are children. It's hard to keep children to put their mask on and that kind of stuff, but we've been able to do pretty well thus far, and I think we will continue doing well as long as people don't just go wild and go crazy over the next couple of weeks.
Well, parents, of course, parents would be attending some of these events and gatherings and stuff, and would definitely be interacting with their children. And I mean, we could only advise parents to still be cautious. But in terms of going forward, you mentioned being fed up, quote unquote, fed up of the mask wearing and stuff, and the world is shifting away from that. Can we see any sort of something near in the future?
So you know, it's so funny that I don't know that we will throw out the mask completely just yet. If you recognize, a couple of weeks ago, Barbados indicated that they would not require mask use outdoors. We are not there yet. We are waiting to hear what the CMO and the Minister of Health and so forth, what they come up with about that. But that is the general direction that the world is going in. Although, if you recognize, many of the Asian countries where there are many infections like these, you know, you would see normally on any day, if you see a picture on the streets of Japan or China, you do see people wearing masks still. And this is even before COVID-19, we were seeing that. So we also need to understand that what comes out of our mouth, the mucus that comes out of our mouth, that is where a virus is, that is where the virus is, and that is how it spreads. So even if particularly if you are sick, particularly if you are in a vulnerable situation, whether the rule says we should be wearing masks or not, you should do what makes sense for you and what makes sense for your family. Now, the thing about children as well that I needed to mention is that for the most part, we were talking about adults being the ones who got sick and adults being the one who got very sick. But we've actually had a couple cases in Tobago where we had children who got very, 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 very sick, to the point where we were really concerned. For those, there were about 2 or 3 of those children. It's called Missy. And we had to ensure that we were working very closely with cardiologists in Trinidad and that kind of stuff. It was that serious. So as much as, you know, we are saying, and that only happened within the last couple of weeks, within even this period where we were saying it has been getting better. So again, we're not completely out of the woods, and we still need to be conscious, particularly if your child has had COVID and you recognize that they're sleeping a lot, they're still very lethargic, you know, they have a little headache that just seems to not be going away. They don't want to go to school because they're just not feeling well, that kind of thing. Or they have a fever that's been there for a while. Don't just ignore that and say, hey, you know, don't ignore that, particularly that fever. If you know your child has had a fever for a while and they're not feeling well, do not ignore that. Take them to the hospital. We have some great pediatricians there who know what to look for. They were able to pick it up, and I want to thank them for being, you know, thinking outside of the box when those cases come up. So it's just a matter of continuing to be vigilant, continuing to do what we need to do, and, you know, we'll get out of this eventually.
Very good. All right. So let's get now to the questions on this question that is on everybody's lip. As a matter of fact, the Division of Health is criticized for not establishing the board.
That is what you were talking about.
Yes, let's talk that. And of course, we'll deal with procurement for contractors who are to supply equipment and all of that. So let's go.
Well, you know what, we've actually, I had a conversation with my administrator yesterday because in the absence of a board, so the CEO is allowed to sign, in essence, sign checks, for want of a better term, up to a certain amount. Without the board, then that responsibility goes to the administrator of the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection. If it is outside of her remit, it goes to the chief administrator of the Division of Health, of the Tobago House of Assembly. So not having a board has really not prevented us from doing any of the things we need to do at the Tobago Regional Health Authority. And to be honest, I have been looking, and my team has been looking for the best of the professionals that need to be on the board, because the board of the Tobago Regional Health Authority is one that has very specific requirements. You need to have someone with a legal background, someone with a medical background, someone with HR and industrial relation background, someone with business background, and so forth. I really want a board that makes sense. And particularly because I have actually experienced being in Tobago over the last 15 years. We had boards all those years, you know. Don't forget. All of those years of the organization not performing, there were boards throughout that entire period. And that did not cause the organization to perform the way it needed to, possibly because the boards were not constructed the way they need to be constructed. But that is something we're working on. We're identifying some of the best and brightest, mixture of young, old, experienced, not so experienced, that kind of thing. And when we release the TRHA board, Tobago will say,
How soon?
I understand what she was waiting for.
Yeah.
That will be in the next couple of weeks, because there are two entities, two specific categories of people that I still have not gotten to the point where I think the individuals who we have in mind are the absolute best just yet. So we are not there yet. In a couple of weeks we should be there. We'll be able to release that. But no, though, because this is a TRHA board, it actually needs to go to cabinet. So it's not just one of those boards where we have the executive council can decide on, and that's it. It then needs to go to cabinet for cabinet to ratify, and that should not take, you know, they're really just waiting for us to do
so
that.
we can't wait. In roughly 2 weeks, the board should
within a couple of weeks. I would not say 2 weeks, because you, Brother B, you know, I don't fall into them kind of things.
Well, I was just about to ask, because you said couple, so I say, is it the couple
in a couple of weeks?
In a couple of
weeks.
We multiply it.
Yes. All right, so let's go now to contractors for suppliers of equipment and all of that.
Right.
I wanted, tweet with the hospital in Roxborough. Is it up and running as a hospital? And give us an update as far as equipment, personnel to operate the equipment. You just tell CT scans. Give us an update as to where we are with the hospital in Roxborough.
Brother B, the hospital in Roxborough is an entity that has been making my life a little bit difficult.
Wow.
And I didn't really want to go down this road, you know. But you realize that we opened the hospital years ago, right? And it had big thing, Prime Minister come up and all kind of story. Big thing happen, right? Okay. We are at the point now where we have the health center services. So the nurses and doctors and so forth who were at the Roxborough Health Center have moved in. We are at the point now where we have outpatient services. So if you need to just come in, do a quick thing at the hospital, then you go. We're at the point where you can get dialysis, so the dialysis machines are up and running and so forth. We are not at the point yet where we actually have accident and emergency or inpatient services. And that is because it is actually taking us quite a while to get the kinds of approvals. Exactly. Don't watch me, sir, because you know what I talk. To get the kinds of approvals that are necessary to do the rubber stamp to say, okay, yes, all of these services are available. It's like somebody just decide one day, Brother B, we're billing a hospital, and we bill a hospital, and no one considered that to get the certificate or get the license for this, that, and the other, the room needs to be a certain size, events need to be a certain way, we need to do things a certain way. Nobody took those things into consideration back then. So we bill a facility. We built a facility, and now we have to go back now to retrofit many of the spaces, to fix many of the things so that we can get the stamp of approval, so that we can get the licensing to open those things properly now. But let me talk about other more pleasant.
Okay, all right.
No, but
Mr. Cox, because I have questions to ask you, but Mr. Cox, and then I'll come back.
Yes, but of course the budget consultations are being held. I believe yesterday would have been the last one. And prior to that, the THA would have offered an online platform for stakeholders to pitch their proposals and so on. What is on the wish list for your division?
I don't know that I have a wish list for my division. My division is one where it has to make sense. One, it is health, wellness, and social protection. The health part, we are actually going to spend the next couple months. By the end of the year, we would have built out what I will call the Department of Health, which is something that has never happened in Tobago before. That Department of Health would actually be the entity that basically does oversight of the TRHA. way. Because we've never had that. If you look at the Ministry of Health structure, you would realize that there are directors of this, that, and the other in Ministry of Health. Tobago has never had that, so we are building that out at that part of it. Social protection, again, we are working through what needs to happen for us to actually provide the kind of services that people need. So we just did some advertisements for like social workers and counselors and those things, because when we came in, I recognized that those individuals were overburdened, they were tired. We had way less than what we needed to do the work that we need to do. So we are building that out. Yes, there are a couple projects that we are going to work on. Of course, with the TRHA, we may need to get a couple of the larger equipment that we don't have right now. So that is in the works. We want to build out the primary care model a little bit more, so that is in the works. I don't think that anything that is on the list is a wish list, because what we've done is actually strategically sat down and thought, this is what we need for the island, this is what makes sense, this is what we can spend, this is what the systems need, and that is what we are building. The Tobago Regional Health Authority, as you know, has a new CEO. We now are hiring quite a number of key personnel because the organization was without leadership for quite some time, and again, that is part of what has caused it to not function the way it should. We are focusing specifically on quality of care and what needs to happen to improve quality of care. So, you know, sometimes people, I see people making posts on Facebook and calling me and messaging me, being so upset about different things that are happening. And I have to tell my friends who, you know, want to get up and fight, like, no, I need to know what is happening. We need to know specifically what is happening, because it's only when we know what is happening where we can identify the gaps. That's where we can determine how to fix it, and that is what we are putting in place, a full quality control system that allows us to fix those things. So no, I would not see any wish lists, but we are strategically creating organizations that actually function.
Very good. All right, well, at the end of the day, and let's go. You said you have a CEO, and of course we know Dr. Duke was appointed and well-deserving, of course, and congratulations for bringing him home. When I heard that, I said, we bring back one of our own. So he knows all too well what the issues are. In the Scarborough General, well, Signal Hill, Scarborough, whatever, in terms of the challenges, of course, we knew prior to your going into office, there were a number of issues that were not non-functional of equipment. One of the challenges were the personnel to maintain, to operate, in some cases, the X-ray machines. Where are we with those equipments? Are they up and running, and are they budgeted for in this budget?
So yes, some are up and running. Some, the good thing about Roxborough is that we actually had equipment sitting in Roxborough that we are now using. So for example, right now there is no CT scan functioning at Scarborough, but there is a functioning CT scan in Roxborough. Great. So we just shift you up to Roxborough if you need to do a CT scan. One of the things we are very proud of is our ability to make the healthcare workers feel a little bit more secure in their jobs. So we've actually started implementing the 3-year contracts to those doctors and nurses and other professionals who were on, in essence, month to month. They were on, you know, month to month in 3 months, so maybe not month to month, so 3-month short-term contracts. Many of those have actually signed their 3-year contracts because they came on during COVID. And I guess they were given short-term because everyone hoped that COVID would last for literally 3 months and then disappear. So what we had to let them know is that even though we are coming to the end of COVID, we are not going to just get rid of you. We actually need you to build out the kind of system that is necessary for us to have proper health care on the island. So many of them have signed their 3-year contracts, and they are very, very happy about that. And we're going through the organization, finding little things. You know, there are several little like industrial relation issues that have been lingering forever and ever. And we're like, let's just settle these. Let's figure out what is the issue. If we're going to hire the person, if we're going to bring back the person, if we need to compensate them, let's just do what we need to do. Let's move on so that people are actually happy in the jobs, and now you can get them to do better work because they are now happy in their workplace.
And what about the encouragement for graduates, medical graduates and so on? I know it's often, many people may not know, but it's a saturated marketplace for recently graduated.
Graduates.
Yes.
You know, that is something that has been a stickling point. Now, the good thing about Roxborough is that we were actually able to hire quite a number of Tobagonians who had graduated, who were professionals in their right, and they were willing to come back home, all just kind of ready and waiting to come back home. Again, kudos to I specifically say kudos to Dr. Duke, because Dr. Duke, being the person he is, being the individual who's running the medical chief of staff for the Roxborough Hospital, he was able to reach out to individuals, you know, some of his, even his colleagues and so forth, to say, hey, all our ways to Begonians, let me come back home, do the interview, you know, come back because we need a this, that, and the other. And I think that helped quite a bit to bring some of these Tobagonians home to do the job. Again, we have to think through what we're doing with healthcare. We have to think through how we are going to manage the health of the island. We have to also think about whether we want to just manage the health of the island or whether we want to export health, because that would also determine whether we bring in specialists that we may not. A Tobagonian may never actually use that specialist, but if it is something that is good enough, others can come in. And for example, our hyperbaric chamber in Roxborough, we've actually had, there was a gentleman from Barbados, I think it was, who left Barbados. He had Benz, left Barbados, came to Tobago, and spent a couple weeks here getting hyperbaric treatment, paid for that. So we have to think, what are the things we can do? How can we bring in some of these specialists? Can we provide a service that is greater than anywhere else? So we bring them here. All of these are part of the larger, longer term plans we have to think about.
Dr. Dimini Wynab, as you mentioned, bringing in the specialists, I cannot escape. Given that we are flying out people, and you spoke about bringing specialists here to treat with the ailments that may be one every month or once every year, and so on. So let's speak to that going forward. Obviously, we are going to close in a minute. But just speak to the idea of preventing this hustle, this transporting of people via helicopter and costing me X amount.
Yeah,
this idea of bringing
the helicopter bill is millions and millions and millions, because apparently we've never paid a helicopter bill for the last how many years. So we have to make a decision. What makes sense? Do we send people down on a helicopter, or do we use that money and bring a specialist up? Again, this has to be worked out with the health professionals when we look at what are the needs, what are the wants, and where we're going to go. That is what will determine those things. Honestly, I cannot answer that question right now, because we are really just trying to level the ship. We're really just trying to settle it so that we can start moving, and then when we level it, then we can start building on a lot of these things.
Okay. Doc, you know, we come to the end of the conversation, and I want to get you back because there's so much more to talk about. And of course, thank you, and you're doing a fantastic job. Continue to do your good work, and always having a pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so at this point in time, we go for a break. When we come back, we speak with Pastor Baines. See you after the break.